Introduction to the Second World of Lotus Tower. The journey of the martial arts world is long, with high mountains and long rivers. The martial arts heroes of the martial arts world are like crucian carp crossing the river, giving birth to heavenly beauties from generation to generation. I am Li Lianpeng. I am not talented, ranking second on the world's expert list. The number one in the world is my younger brother, Li Lianhua. He also has another name, Li Xiangyi, widely recognized as the proud son of heaven in the martial arts world. P.S. Due to my special love for the TV series, Lotus Tower, I would like to feature this fan to commemorate my previous martial arts dream. Don't complain if you don't like it. Chapter 1. Li Lianpeng returns to customs and goes down the mountain. You are listening at novel full.audio. Lianpeng, I can't teach you more. Your heart is still in dust. It's time for you to go down the mountain today. Qixing Mountain, Hanshan Temple. At noon on this day, the sky was clear and cloudless for thousands of miles, but I don't know if there was an illusion. In the direction of the East China Sea, there was a faint flash of thunder. The empty monk of the Hanshan Temple withdrew his gaze thoughtfully, with a compassionate expression on his face, and looked at the young man in cloth clothes who was still handsome in the morning exercise in the courtyard, speaking slowly. Li Lianpeng, who was doing morning exercises, was taken aback at the words and stopped moving. She turned her head to look at the old monk who had been living together in this Hanshan temple for more than 10 years. She could not set aside any channels. Old monk, are you finally willing for me to return to secular life and go down the mountain? Upon hearing this, Master Gongzi let out a sigh and said, I didn't mean to imprison you here, but rather your body was filled with cold poison. Only the Longyan spring on the back mountain of Hanshan Temple can dispel this cold poison in your body. However, it has been misunderstood by you for over a decade. Li Lianpeng rolled her eyes and moved her strong body for a moment. The old monk is good at talking nonsense. It's clear that you wanted to take me as an apprentice and begged for more than 10 years without success. Seeing that I have reached adulthood, you had no choice but to let me go down the mountain. The saying that you have cold poison in your body is just an excuse for not being able to take me as an apprentice. Monk Gongzi didn't answer, just looked at him and sighed, with a bitter smile on his face. Upon learning that she was finally able to descend the mountain and regain her vitality, Li Lianpeng waved her hand and spoke confidently. It's all right, young master. I won't argue with you, the old monk. 12 years ago, you saved my life, and over the past 12 years, you have taught me many skills. I, Li Lianpeng, appreciate your kindness. What's the point of calling out, master, to you? After speaking, he simply fell to his knees with a sharp thud and sincerely said, Master is here, please accept my disciple's worship. Monk Gongzi shook his head, received his bow, and turned towards the temple. After this trip down the mountain, don't mention the name Lao Na Fa or this Hanshan temple to the outside world. Remember. When Li Lianpeng heard the old monk's words and was about to look up to ask why, suddenly a golden light flashed in front of him. When he opened his eyes again, he was no longer in the temple where he had lived for more than 10 years, but on a mountain path halfway up the mountain. Li Lianpeng was not surprised either. She patted the dust on her knees and stood up. After spending more than 10 years together, he had already known about this monk, Gongzi, who was hidden in a deep mountain temple and was a Taoist master. Not only proficient in Buddhism, but also proficient in mechanisms and formations, as well as the art of evading armor through strange doors. A strange temple that is never worshipped by pilgrims, revealing secrets everywhere. As long as the old monk is unwilling, he cannot leave no matter what. For the past 12 years, he has been trapped in that temple, eating vegetarian meals every day, soaking in hot springs, copying scriptures, and doing morning exercises. Every time I try to sneak down the mountain, I get lost in the thick fog outside the temple, walk along, and eventually return to this temple. Li Lianpeng is not from this world. In his past life, he lay in bed charging and watching TV dramas. Suddenly, a second-hand charger plug he bought online sparked sparks, and his body trembled, leaving him completely unaware. When I woke up again, my consciousness was confused and I only heard the voice of a child in my ear. I was helpless and cried, while shouting loudly for my brother. Although his consciousness was unclear at the time, he also learned through a brief memory flashing in his mind that the child who called him brother was his own younger brother who relied on each other for survival. In addition, besides the crying child present, there was another little boy shouting his name over and over again. I can't quite remember what happened afterwards, as if there was a strong obsession supporting his consciousness. He took out a jade pendant from his arms and handed it to another boy who called his name. Looking back at this moment, at that young age, he was actually entrusted on his deathbed. He was seriously injured for some unknown reason at that time, and after entrusted, his newly awakened consciousness fell silent again. When he woke up, he saw an old monk with a kind face and eyes, looking down at him, singing the Buddhist name continuously in his mouth. The next thing became simple. As a monk, with compassion, he saw his severely injured and dying self, and his kindness surged. He saved himself and took him to the mountain. So much so that Li Lianpeng, who knew he had traveled through the world after his death, did not know what dynasty he had traveled to, and remained completely unaware of this world. It is unknown which dynasty and era this is an ancient world. Ask the old monk, he never goes into detail, only saying that they are in an era that appears to be peaceful and prosperous on the surface, but in reality, it has already been turbulent in the dark. If there is even a little turbulence, it is very likely to be overturned. With this statement, Li Lianpeng became even more curious. In his memory, there are too many dynasties that can match this statement. He has been guessing for so many years, but he cannot be certain. At this moment, the old monk Gongzi was finally willing to let him go down the mountain. The first thing Li Lianpeng had to do was to determine his own dynasty before deciding what to do. In the end, looking for a book garden www.zhaozhuyuan.com is hundreds of times stronger than staying in the deep mountains and forests, facing the merciless face of the empty and lonely old monk day after day, who only knows how to eat fast and recite Buddha's kindness and kindness. The mountain path leads directly to the foot of the mountain, with some twists and turns during the process. Due to the high height of Qixing Mountain, some places are extremely steep, and we had to change the route. Fortunately, all the way down, in less than an hour, Li Lianpeng arrived at the foot of the mountain. Squatting down by a small stream and washing his face, Li Lianpeng accidentally saw a reflection in the water. He stared at it for a while, lost in thought, and searched his stomach for a long time before finally holding back a sentence. Handsome, I steamed so beautifully. The memories of the past life have become somewhat blurred with the passage of 12 years of temple life in the mountains, but Li Lianpeng still remembers a metaphor, which is Xian Zhu. Sword eyebrows and starry eyes, eyes like stars, wearing a coarse white cloth on him, surpassing gold threads and jade clothes. His unique temperament makes his clothes seem much more elegant. Li Lianpeng felt that the phrase, people rely on their clothes and horses rely on their saddles, should be repeated upside down when applied to herself. Those beautiful ladies in ancient costumes at the foot of the mountain, Li Lianpeng and Li Yanzu are here. Li Lianpeng, who was able to smile and have a childlike heart and mortal desires, stood up straight and walked towards the downstream of the stream. Following the stream and crossing several large pools and waterfalls, Li Lianpeng finally saw a small village. The village is not big, with scattered farmhouses scattered around. There are many farmlands near the houses, and it is at the end of autumn. The ground is golden, and farmers bend down to harvest wheat. Li Lianpeng watched this scene with great joy in his heart, and couldn't help but applaud and shout. This is really. The mountains and rivers are heavy, and there is no way out. The willows are dark and the flowers are bright. What a wonderful village. It's really amazing. Chapter 2. The Legend of the Jianghu. You are listening at novel full.audio. Excuse me, What is the name of this place and how far is it from the nearest town? Li Lianpeng stood above the field ridge, bowed to the old farmer's bank harvesting wheat below, and asked with a smile. The old man wearing a straw hat raised his head and looked at the handsome young man with short hair, who had a dusty temperament. He remained silent for a long time before finally answering. This is Shaowang village. As for the town mentioned by the young man, 20 miles south, there is a town called Qingyi town. 30 or 10 miles north, there is a county town called Yunmeng County. Our Shaowang village is under the jurisdiction of Yunmeng County. Thank you for informing me, Father.in.law. Li Lianpeng bowed again. The old farmer quickly waved his hand, with a simple expression on his dark face, no problem, no problem. After thanking Li Lianpeng, he followed the direction pointed by the old farmer and spent 2 hours arriving at a place called Qingyi town. This town is not big, just over 200 steps down the street from start to finish. However, the town is very lively, with escorts selling goods, foot traders, and people coming and going. It's really lively. At this moment, Li Lianpeng had no silver on his body, but fortunately he didn't feel thirsty or hungry. He should first inquire about which dynasty and generation this was. Arriving at a tea shop, Li Lianpeng saw the waiter with a kind face. He clasped his hands together and solemnly proclaimed the Buddhist name, "May I borrow a wooden chair from your store and take a rest?" The shop assistant looked at him twice and saw him dressed in a white cloth coat that was spotless and washed to a bright white color, with short hair tightly attached to his scalp, like a monk. After thinking for a moment, he just borrowed a place to rest, and the shopkeeper liked to be kind to people in the martial arts world. The monks were also considered martial arts people, so he smiled and said, "Please enter the shop and find an empty table to sit down." Li Lianpeng had a compassionate smile on his face and said, "Goodness, goodness, thank you very much, benefactor." Entering the tea shop, there were many people dressed in martial arts attire chatting and chatting. Li Lianpeng looked around and found an empty table to sit down, listening attentively. At the end of the battle, 2 large ships were completely destroyed. Li Xiangyi, the leader of the Siga Gate, who was fighting alone, wielded the Shaoshi sword and used a sword move called Yu Long returns to the sea. In an instant, the sword energy soared, and the seawater hung upside down, transforming into water dragons, shooting straight at the demon head flute of the cult's Golden Mandarin Alliance leader. The fluttering sound of the flute is truly a renowned demon in the martial arts world. Its skillful swordsmanship is also superb. When faced with the rushing water, it calmly responds. First, it cuts off the water with one blow, cutting off the source of the water. Then, with a sharp upward thrust, it uses its surging internal strength to pull up a water curtain. Afterwards, Li Xiangyi, the head of the Siga sect, who was seriously injured, fell into the East China Sea after being hit by the sound of the big demon's flute as the bright moon sank into the West Sea, and his whereabouts remained unknown. After hearing the eloquent Jianghu person finish speaking, he extended his hand to the side and said, "Serve the tea." Someone quickly handed it over on the side and urgently asked, "What's next?" The person took a sip of water and said, "Next." Everyone in the martial arts world knows what's going on. Since then, the whole martial arts world has been in a state of decline, without the cult Golden Mandarin Alliance or the 4 gates guarding the righteous path of the martial arts world. After the disappearance of Li Xiangyi, the core figure, the heavily damaged Siga Gate disbanded. Li Xiangyi's left and right arms, including 4 great warriors, Buddha Bai Baishe, led the remaining disciples to establish the Baichuan Academy, which now manages the affairs of the martial arts world, after the swamp behind Qingyuan Mountain, continuing to promote the concept of Li sect leader guarding the justice of the martial arts world. Alas, it's a pity that Li Xiangyi, a legendary genius in the martial arts world, ended up with such a fate. TSK, this martial arts world is full of fighting and killing. In the end, there's no such thing as fame and fortune, and one's life is in vain. There's really nothing good about it, just wine is good. Go, go. Those who drink should go to the neighboring tavern. This is the place to drink tea, and I can't tolerate you, such a drunkard, pointing fingers. You dare to change your ways and say that Master Li is not here. You really don't know how to live or die. Why didn't Master Li take you and others away when he was rectifying the martial arts world? Get out of here. I won't let anyone talk about it yet. Sigh, don't hit anyone. Let's go, I won't be able to leave yet. If it weren't for not having money to drink, who would love to drink this bland tea? If you ask me for money, I won't even drink it. During the shoving, a young man dressed in plain clothes, with a pale face and a delicate appearance, was pushed out by a group of dissatisfied Jianghu people. Li Lianpeng, who was listening to the entire story, turned to look at the young man with a bitter smile on his face, lost in thought. After waiting for everyone's gaze to gather around the martial arts expert who seemed to have witnessed a battle with his own eyes, Li Lianpeng left the tea shop. In an alley. Your Excellency, don't follow me anymore. Come out now. I know you're behind me. What's up, why don't you speak up to me in person? Benefactor, you have a keen sense of perception. Li Lianpeng, Shiran, appeared and looked at the man in plain clothes with a smile on his face. Little monk, Dharma name. Kong, dare you ask the name of the benefactor? Li Lianhua. Li Lianpeng's smile grew stronger in his eyes, but he tried his best to endure it, clasping his hands together and singing a Buddhist chant, Amitabha Buddha. It turns out to be the Lotus Almsgiver. Please find the book Garden www.zhaoshuyuan.com and let me know. I have a gift in this room. Polite and courteous. Li Lianhua casually arched her hand and looked at the little monk with a slightly hollow pair of eyes. Why are you following me, little monk? I suddenly remembered and pointed to Li Lianpeng, saying. Oh, I remember. Just now, little monk, you were also eating tea in that tea shop. Li Lianpeng shook his head and said, I happen to be resting here, I don't have money to eat tea. What do you mean, little monk? Is it possible to find me to make a fortune? Li Lianhua raised her eyebrows and spread out her hand with a bitter smile. I'm already penniless all over, and I can't even afford to drink. As you can see, I was just kicked out by those Jianghu guests. Li Lianpeng thought to himself, how could someone like you not have the money to drink? Big scam. When Li Lianpeng saw the young man in plain clothes, his eyes blank and numb as he spoke, occasionally showing a hint of sadness, the memories of his past life, which had been dead for over a decade, suddenly attacked him. I can't remember anything else, but before being electrocuted in his past life, he vividly remembered the content of the TV series he stayed up late to pursue. The person in front of him is the male protagonist Li Lianhua from the martial arts TV series, Lotus Tower, he watched before coming to this world. He has another name. Li Xiangyi is a young hero recognized in the martial arts world as the #1 master, possessing the most keen and gentle martial arts skills. He is slow in Yangzhou and possesses 2 unparalleled swords, the young master and the sword-smashing neck. It is also highly likely to be his only relative in this lifetime. Li Lianpeng had a bold guess in his heart that the Li Lianhua in front of him, Li Xiangyi, who was unaware of life and death after the battle against the great demon flute in the East China Sea, was very likely his biological younger brother. Chapter 3. What a Lotus Tower. You are listening at novel full.audio. Seeing the self-proclaimed Kong monk, whose name sounded like a fake monk, Li Lianhua became a bit impatient after a while of silence. This. Master Kong. I have something important to do. If you have nothing to do with me, then I will leave now. Wait a minute. Li Lianpeng quickly spoke up and called out to him, I have something to ask for. Li Lianhua tilted her head slightly and said, what's up? Let's talk about it in advance. I really don't have any money on me. Li Lianpeng smiled bitterly in her heart. This Li Lianhua is really a strange guy who likes to fuss over small things and can completely give up her life to help others in big matters. Taking back the chaotic thoughts, Li Lianpeng said, I have come from a long distance and I am not familiar with the place of life. There are no acquaintances who can join me. Today, when I see the young master with a kind face, meeting him is fate. Can I temporarily stay at the young master's house for a while? Before Li Lianhua could refuse, Li Lianpeng added. Don't worry, young master Li. I will not live in vain. I come from a distant dietary country and am proficient in cooking. As long as young master Li is willing to provide ingredients, I promise to provide him with different foods every day. Dietary country. Li Lianhua looked up and down at him suspiciously. Why have I never heard of it? Li Lianpeng smiled mysteriously. The country of cuisine is located at the end of the East China Sea, about 108,000 miles away. In the hometown of the little monk, everyone is a master chef, and everyone has a deep understanding of culinary skills. Although the young monk followed his master to the mountains to practice Buddhism at a young age, he never lacked culinary skills to ensure that Prince Li could enjoy his feast. Although I can't remember what profession I actually engaged in my past life, in short, Li Lianpeng has a natural passion for cooking. Over the years in the Han temple, he has been able to make flowers from the ordinary vegetarian ingredients brought up by the old monk. In my memory, in this drama, Li Xiangyi, who was poisoned by Bai Cha and transformed into Li Lianhua, enjoys cooking besides inquiring about his senior brother's whereabouts and recovering from illness. After 10 years of practice, I am still a trainee chef. Sorry, just like you, I have always had no fixed place to stay. Every night, I either stay on the streets or stay overnight at a friend's house. There is really no place for you, master. Li Lianpeng knew that with Li Lianhua's cunning, cautious and suspicious personality, she would definitely refuse and said. I am also proficient in divination. Li Lianhua wondered, divination. Li Lianpeng nodded and said, Bu Gua. May I ask Master Kong to first calculate the hexagram for me? Li Lianhua asked with great interest. Why not? After Li Lianpeng finished speaking, she pretended to close her eyes and concentrate. Seeing him close his eyes, Li Lianhua turned around and was about to sneak away. Li Lianpeng spoke in time. Li Gongzi has always been looking for someone who has turned into bones. Li Lianhua, who was about to apply oil on her feet, suddenly turned her head and stared fixedly at the fake monk dressed in cloth. In the mountains and forests, the trees are lush, the flowers and plants are golden, and butterflies and bees dance. The wind blows and leaves fall, and fruitful fruits hang on the branches. Master Kong, why can you calculate that I am looking for a dead person? This is a heavenly secret which must not be disclosed, otherwise there may be human harm. Godly chatter. What did Master Li say? It's nothing, it's almost here, no. It's just over there, Lotus Tower, my residence. What a Lotus Tower, Mr. Li should be a person of great elegance. Fake praise. Fox spirit, I'm back. Come out and welcome me soon. Li Lianhua, dressed in plain clothes, walked first towards the Lotus Tower. Li Lianpeng, dressed in cloth clothes, glanced at the walking building from a distance and couldn't help but admire it, then followed closely behind. As they approached, a yellow dog emerged from beneath the exquisitely designed wooden building powered by 4 horses. This is the fox spirit, Li Lianhua, who has been accompanied by inner loneliness for 10 years, and the local dog that can help people solve cases. Fox spirit. Why did Prince Li give it such a name? Li Lianpeng attached herself and caressed her back, curious and asking. Li Lianhua opened the door of the wooden building without looking back and casually said. It started haphazardly. I see, young Master Li is so elegant. At night, Li Lianpeng showed off her skills and cooked a table of dishes. The two sat opposite each other, and Li Lianhua, who was quite stingy, made an exception and took out a jar of wine to entertain Li Lianpeng. As she poured the wine, it seemed as if she suddenly remembered the monk Beiji. Li Lianhua smiled and asked, "Can Kong Kong mage drink alcohol?" And the answer from the monk across from him greatly disappointed him. Li Gongzi has been worried too much. I am from the dietary country and do not avoid appetite. Joke, Li Lianpeng has been eating vegetarian food on the mountain for more than a decade, and now he has finally come down the mountain. If he doesn't drink or eat meat anymore, it will make him unable to live anymore. So, today we'll borrow some wine and vegetables and have a good drink. Li Lianhua said with great pain. If it were him alone, this jar of wine could last for at least a few days. When the fake monk spoke, his tone was quite loud, indicating what kind of alcohol tolerance he might have. Alas, it's just that. Tonight, let's just consider the possibility of exchanging wine. The origin of this fake monk is unknown, and his appearance is so handsome that it can almost rival his previous appearance. In addition, he breathes long and falls silently while walking, so he should also be a person with excellent internal strength. Moreover, one can easily reveal the secret of searching for the whereabouts of their senior brother's body with just one mouth, which is probably not an ordinary person in the martial arts world. Please calm him down first before proceeding. Li Lianhua thought to herself and picked up her wine glass. In the words of a mage, meeting is fate. I would like to offer a toast to the mage. Go to the book garden www.zhaoshuyuan.com, she said, it's easy to say. Li Lianpeng also picked up his wine glass and touched it with the one in Li Lianhua's hand. Thank you, Mr. Li, for your kind reception. It's all in the wine. After speaking, he looked up and drank it all in one gulp. Li Lianhua squinted her eyes and drank the wine in her glass. Li Gongzi tasted the monk's craftsmanship, and after traveling here, the monk had not started making meals for a long time, and it is unknown whether his craftsmanship has declined. Li Lianhua picked up her chopsticks, picked up a piece of braised pork belly and put it into her mouth. Immediately, he widened his eyes and gave a thumbs up to Li Lianhua. The wizard is really good at cooking. With a sincere admiration, Li Lianhua casually took 2 more bites and put down her chopsticks. He was deeply poisoned by green tea, and his 5 internal organs were damaged. He could not eat much food on weekdays, but he was forced to suppress it by medicine, wine and internal power. Occasionally, he needed to go to Hanshui Temple to find monk Wu acupuncture and moxibustion for treatment. Moreover, tonight's meal was not meant for dinner, but to test the way the person in front of them came from. Li Lianpeng didn't care at all. When he saw Li Lianhua fall off his chopsticks, he continued to move non-stop, descending as fast as flying. He ate a few bites of food and drank a sip of wine, and in less than a moment, a table of dishes had already been eaten. After finishing the meal, he let out a lifeless burp and murmured to himself. This is life. Li Lianhua rested her hand on her forehead and stared blankly at him. Li Lianpeng pretended not to have seen the shock in his eyes, yawned long and stretched lazily. I haven't slept soundly for a long time. Thank you very much for treating me tonight, young Master Li. I will go to bed now. After speaking, he nodded at Li Lianhua and walked towards the middle of the building, lying down on her wooden bed. Soon, snoring began everywhere. Chapter 4. The Little Monk's Room Has Rites. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. At the beginning of the morning, a few green sparrows fell on the windowsill, chirping and waking up Li Lianpeng. He sat up and stretched lazily with his eyes closed. He slept exceptionally soundly that night, not worried about what Li Lianhua would do to him. Firstly, he had skills in his body. The scriptures that Master Qingyi of Hanshan Temple had him stir right included many Buddhist techniques, including one called Dragon Elephant Prajnaparamita technique, which was his main morning exercise. After 12 years, according to the old monk's account, he has already gained a glimpse into the path of enlightenment. He has achieved great success in his studies, not to mention the difficulty of swords and knives, and his inner strength is particularly strong. From this statement, it can be seen that the old monk who has a kind face and good eyes hidden in the mountains for meditation is not simple. A serious monk who talks about swordsmanship and inner strength in silence. Isn't this something that only people in the martial arts world would say to show off to the outside world? The second reason is simple. Since it's the martial arts world and the TV drama Lotus Tower, it's easy to control Li Lianhua's temperament. Li Lianhua's skill is almost lost now, and she still has all sorts of problems. Coupled with her own desires, she definitely won't do anything excessive. Li Lianpeng slept in his clothes last night, and when he woke up, his cloth clothes were a bit wrinkled. Li Lianpeng thought to himself that the difficult conditions on the mountain were enough. He could still make do with a piece of cloth that had been washed hundreds of times with starch, as long as it didn't rot. He couldn't make do with it after going down the mountain. With a calculation in mind, Li Lianpeng went out to search for Li Lianhua. The first floor of the Lucky Lotus building, a mobile building made up of wooden boats, only has a wooden bed. I don't know how Li Lianhua slept last night, but Li Lianpeng didn't hear his footsteps entering the room. It's also possible that he came in, but he didn't notice. He slept too soundly last night. After Li Lianpeng went out, he saw Li Lianhua carefully watering the flowers at the door with 2 black circles under her eyes. Seeing him come out, he reluctantly showed a tired smile. Get up, how was Master Kong sleeping in the room last night? Li Lianpeng nodded and said, I slept very well. Turning a deaf ear to the resentment in Li Lianhua's tone, he asked, does young Master Li have any extra clothes? I have only this one garment on me since I have traveled here. I was too tired last night and slept with it. When I woke up, I couldn't wear this cloth anymore. So, Li Lianhua's gaze towards him suddenly became somewhat resentful. As soon as he comes, he will occupy my bed, and now he still needs to borrow clothes from me. The monk from this dietary country really doesn't consider himself an outsider. Li Lianhua reluctantly put down the wooden pot in her hand, let go of a weight, turned around and entered the wooden house, flipping through boxes and cabinets. Li Lianpeng looked at his thin and slightly hunched back and smiled. Li Lianhua, believe me, on the day we uncover the truth about our respective identities, you will thank me. After a moment, Li Lianhua came out holding a grey cloth jacket that was similar in color to his body, handed it to Li Lianpeng, and muttered. This is the only one I can barely make do with. The other clothes I have are either too pudding or just. Li Lianpeng interrupted, young Master Li is too worried. Some can be worn, and I don't mind it. Li Lianhua. Li Lianpeng took his clothes and asked Li Lianhua, is there any river water nearby? I haven't bathed in it for 3 days, and it's against the rules to be covered in dirt. Not far east from here, there is a river that is neither deep nor urgent, but can be used for people to wash up. Li Lianhua pointed to the east and said. Li Lianpeng clasped her hands together, sang a Buddhist chant, and then hugged her clothes and walked towards the direction pointed by Li Lianhua. Half an hour later, Li Lianpeng, who had been groomed, looked at the wooden building that had disappeared in place, as well as the faint wool marks on the grass. The corners of her mouth curved slightly, and a smile appeared on her face. Li Lianhua, you are really stingy enough. Brother just borrowed a bed and a piece of clothing, and you exposed your stingy nature. Half an hour, equivalent to an hour, with the weight of the Lotus Tower, Li Lianpeng couldn't run far. He changed into clothes and held on to the cloth clothes uploaded from the temple, his feet flying, carefully following the car seal. In less than 15 minutes, he saw the Lotus Tower parked in the mountains and forests in the distance. Woo, woof, woof. Before approaching, I heard a barking sound from a dog, but someone got into trouble with Li Lianhua. You are not a scholar. My young master has set his sights on your small building, which is your honor. How dare you not sell it? Ladies and gentlemen, I am truly sorry. Although my small building is not a precious item, it is my hiding place and cannot be sold. Otherwise, I will be camping in the wilderness. Please forgive me. In just one sentence, do you sell or not? At the entrance of Lianhua building, 3 burly men surrounded Li Lianhua and threatened him to sell the building. Behind these strong men, a young man in brocade with a childish face rode on a tall horse, holding a wooden stick in his hand, calmly teasing the fox spirit. The fox spirit crawled on the ground, its cries filled with hostility. It felt the current situation of its owner in itself, feeling uneasy in its heart, but did not shrink back from it. Li Lianpeng's eyes lit up as she watched this scene. This is exactly the opportunity that is difficult to find even with a lantern on, and there is no trace of gaining favor on Li Lianhua's side. Due to the poison of green tea, Li Lianhua usually does not take action and has been striving to play the role of an ordinary person. At most, with the title of a divine doctor. However, it is obvious that Li Lianhua has not yet possessed the renowned title of Li Xianyi in the martial arts world. Otherwise, he would not have been unrecognized and forced to sell his property. Several benefactors, I have some courtesy in this room. Please find the book garden at www.zhaosuiyuan.com. Before Li Lianpeng arrived, the sound arrived first. The first time I used what I learned from the temple on the mountain after going down the mountain. The strong internal force was attached to the sound, with the target pointing directly at the 4 people and a horse surrounding the Lotus Tower. The extraordinary black horse under the boy's crotch was startled by the sound of Li Lianpeng's internal strength, and he let out a long hiss, standing up. Ah ah! The young man in brocade on the horse's back tightened the reins when he was caught off guard. He let out a cry of surprise, but never fell off the horse's back. However, this scene frightened the 3 guards who looked like them. They all turned around and didn't pay attention to the sound coming from behind, each taking action. Young master, be careful. Scared. Quickly catch the young master. 3 strong men rushed towards the young man, stabilized the frightened horse, and immediately turned around, glaring angrily in the direction of Li Lianpeng. One of them shouted, "Who are you coming from? Report your name." The other person said sternly and inwardly, "Do you know who my young master is? If I hurt my master, I will definitely take your life." The last man didn't say anything, but with a clang, he drew his long sword from his waist and looked fiercely at Li Lianpeng. Li Lianpeng had a gentle expression, with her hands clasped together and a compassionate expression on her face. Amitabha Buddha, goodness is goodness. The monk's dharma name is Kong Kong, and he is the roommate of this young Master Li. I wonder what the benefactors are doing. Empty mage. Roommates. The 2 men who spoke out and asked in unison. Li Lianpeng nodded slowly, but her gaze turned to the young man in brocade with a disheveled expression on his horse's back. Exactly. Chapter 5. Duochou Gongzi Fang Duobing. You are listening at novel full.audio. You, monk, really have such strong internal strength. I ask you, what is your relationship with the owner of this small building? The young man in brocade on horseback faced Li Lianpeng's gaze and raised his chin. He first openly acknowledged Li Lianpeng's martial arts skills, and then asked about his background and relationship with Li Lianhua. Li Lianpeng still had a smiling and harmless demeanor towards humans and animals. Yesterday, I met Li Lianhua and Li Gongzi, who were behind the benefactors, at first sight. Therefore, I accepted the invitation and stayed in this Lotus Tower for a long time. If you must use the word good friend to describe the relationship between me and Li Gongzi, then use it as a good friend. Friend. The young man in brocade blinked his eyes. A sickly scholar and a monk with short hair and no monk's clothes are good friends. You 2 are definitely weird. The young man in brocade concluded. Behind everyone, Li Lianhua quietly rolled her eyes. Feeling restless in my heart, this fake monk is like a sticky candy that can't even be shaken off. What's even more annoying is that this wealthy young master, who comes from an unknown place, is hiding well in this forest with people. Suddenly, he is approached by a passing young man in brocade, who says he wants to buy his wooden building for 1,000 taels of silver. I had already said I wouldn't sell it, but the young man remained silent. He flipped over and mounted his horse, allowing the three of them to come up and grind people with no intention of killing, despite their fierce presence. Li Lianhua thought for a whole night and no longer intended to use external forces to search for the body of her senior brother, Shan Gudao, who was nowhere to be found. In the past 6 years, he has gathered a lot of clues. Upon careful consideration, it is likely that he is not far from finding his senior brother's body, and he does not intend to make any extra mistakes. Therefore, taking advantage of the unknown fake monk's time to wash up in the river, he took the Lotus Tower and ran around, hiding here. Unexpectedly, on the way, I met a young man with strong and domineering attire, exuding a sense of grandeur. In fact, his eyes were clear with a hint of foolishness, without any malice. On the contrary, his curiosity was strong. It was suspected that a young man with thick eyebrows and big eyes who had just run out of the house, with a servant who was not fierce, had entangled him. Later, misfortune never comes alone, and the fake monk also approached him when he was about to take the initiative to sprinkle hallucinogens and escape. Upon realizing this, Li Lianhua couldn't help but put her hand on her forehead, crouched down, and lowered her head in a low sigh. He just wants to find the body of his senior brother Dan Gudao, bury it next to his master's grave, and find a quiet place to wait for his death. Why is it so difficult? Has Li Xiangyi been too smooth before? So much so that even the heavens couldn't bear to see him, they sent a fake monk and a fake villain to punish him when he was betrayed and time was running out. I'm really unlucky. Why don't you dismount first, benefactor? This horse looks extraordinary at first, but it seems to be sick and its legs keep shaking. Upon hearing this, the young man in brocade immediately lowered his head and noticed the precious horse he had stolen from home. As the monk had said, the 4 legs of the horse had been shaking incessantly since the last moment, indicating that the monk's internal strength had injured his heart. Quickly jumping off the horse's back, he turned around and ordered. Zhang San, you and Li Si should take my Fengshan foal to the town ahead and see the doctor. Is it okay? Wang Wu, please stay with me. This. Young master, this is not appropriate. The martial arts world is dangerous. The young man in brocade frowned and shouted loudly. Why don't you go quickly? I won't even listen to young master's words, will I? Seeing the 2 guards who were named still bowing their heads, standing still and silently resisting, the young man suddenly became extremely angry. He lifted his leg and kicked one of them with 1 foot. You still protect me, just your 3-legged kung fu. Even 3 people tied together can't beat me. You still protect me. I think I'm pretty good at protecting you all. Hurry up, it's delaying the horse's injury. Be careful with the family's care. Pu Tong, Pu Tong. The 2 men named suddenly knelt down. One of the people cried, Young master, we really can't let you out of sight. Even if our martial arts skills are shallow, we can at least block you for a moment in case you encounter danger. This world of martial arts is not as good as our family, young master. Upon seeing this, the young man in brocade suddenly lost most of his anger. In fact, he was not angry at all. How could he be angry with such loyal guards? Just to support them. After finally sneaking out of the villa and preparing to venture into the martial arts world, what's going on with a group of rough guards? It's just that. I won't force you, young master. Come on, get closer and let you see an object. As he spoke, he rolled up the cuffs of white silk and gold thread, revealing a wristband on his wrist. Do you think I'm not prepared? I was already prepared before I left. Did this object ever make you feel at ease? After seeing something on the wrist of the young man in brocade, Zhang San and Li Si hesitated for a moment. If you have this thing to protect the young master, then you don't have to worry. You should know that this is an item designed by the villa master himself, which will inevitably be robbed in the martial arts world. With it, I believe the young master's safety is safe. Because of this one thing alone, it can withstand dozens of guards like them. So. Zhang San is still hesitating, but even so, he still doesn't want to leave the young master. Although the young master sneaked out, following him along the way was much better than staying in the villa, as he was well fed with wine and meat. The young man in Qingyi was really impatient. Seeing that the two still couldn't get up on their knees, he angrily said, hurry up, hurry up. If you delay me from making friends in the martial arts world, I will really be impolite. Yes, yes. Young master, be careful in all things. Go to Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com and wait for the two of us to heal young master's horse. Then come find young master. Zhang San quickly put away his careful thoughts and hurriedly said yes, not calling the young man in brocade a young master. After speaking, the two of them stood up, led the injured horse, and walked up the official road in the distance with 3 turns in 1 step. Li Lianhua and Li Lianpeng, who witnessed this scene, had different expressions. Li Lianpeng remembers the TV plot, hearing the words villa and seeing the extraordinary and intricately designed object on the young man's wrist, she immediately knew who the young man in brocade was in front of her. And Li Lianhua, on the other hand, was due to his senior brother Dan Gudao. When he was still Li Xiangyi, he wandered the martial arts world and visited many places, especially the famous and upright sects in the world. He almost always came to visit. After seeing the object on the boy's wrist, I immediately guessed who the boy in front of me was. I just didn't expect that this kid has changed so much since he hasn't seen him for years. He remembers when he saw this kid with his senior brother Dan Gudao, he was still sitting on a wooden chair, thin and powerless, unable to even lift a peachwood sword. Unexpectedly, just a few years have passed, and this kid has already been able to dominate the martial arts world. Li Lianhua shook her head slightly and stopped thinking. Now, the old friend has passed away. He is no longer the spirited Li Xiangyi of the past. What else do he want to do? Getting rid of the young man in front of him and the fake monk in the distance as soon as possible, and returning to a peaceful life is the most important thing at present. After the two figures disappeared, the young man in brocade changed his previous dandy appearance, straightened his shoulders, clasped his fists, straightened his collar, and bowed to Li Lianhua with a smile. I am worried that young master Fang Duobing is ill and has no ill intentions. I have offended you so much before, and I apologize to the Lord of Lotus Tower. Chapter 6. To be proud in life, one must enjoy it to the fullest. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. It turned out to be young Xia Fang. Fortunately, I am Li Lianhua. Li Lianhua stood up and arched her hand, smiling and saying, young Xia Fang's words are too heavy. I have already realized that young Xia Fang has no ill intentions, and offending him is beyond words. Fang Duobing was surprised for a moment, thinking that he truly deserved to be Dr. Li, who was often talked about by his aunt. With such a broad-mindedness and demeanor, it seemed worth making friends with for the time being. However, since I am responsible for both my aunt and myself, I still need to explore. Does Lord Li remember a woman who was treated a year ago? Her name is He Xiaofeng. Fang Duobing asked solemnly with a small face. Upon hearing this, Li Lianhua looked bewildered and exclaimed, did young Xia Fang recognize the wrong person? I have no medical skills, and I have never saved anyone. I wonder who Miss Fang is and who she is. Seeing his sincere questioning expression, his surprised expression did not seem to be hypocritical. Fang Duobing became suspicious instead. Is it possible that the clever words that aunt said about reviving life and death are all deceptive? Why does this Li Lianhua look weak and short in spirit, without the clear breeze and clear moon temperament that my aunt described? Can such a person be considered a miracle doctor? Fang Duobing, who was just starting out, felt that his aunt might have been deceived. Aunt He Xiaofeng appears to be unparalleled in intelligence on the surface, and is also known as the third beauty in the world's martial arts world. For women, her martial arts skills can be considered small and successful, but only he knows that an aunt who is not a few years older than him is the dumbest. This fool is not lacking in wisdom, but a flower lover. His mother once taught her a lesson, but he accidentally overheard it. My mother's original words were, Xiaofeng, my elder sister doesn't want you to be wealthy or become a respected chivalrous woman in the martial arts world. I only wish you could find a suitable husband and teach your children as soon as possible, instead of being deceived by those young people who wander the martial arts world and are accustomed to using sweet words to please others. How many times have you been? It is obvious that, based on the true words of her mother, Auntie has been deceived by men more than once when wandering in the martial arts world. Every time, she needs her mother, who is the head of the Qingyi Hall, to come forward and help her deal with those evil relationships in the martial arts world. From this, it seems that the Li Divine Doctor in the Lotus Tower is also one of the unfortunate relationships left by the aunt in the martial arts world outside of Qingyi Mountain Villa. No, we have been determined since childhood to venture into the martial arts world and uphold justice. If we cannot even understand the reasons for small family matters, what is it to uphold justice for people in the martial arts world? Just Fang Duobing looked up and down at Li Lianhua a few times, thinking to himself, but Li Lianhua seemed to be easily knocked down by the wind. It was obvious that she couldn't ask anything about the threat, and there was also the empty monk who was watching closely. Judging from the monk's performance just now, his internal strength was quite impressive, almost reaching his 8th level of success. Although he was not afraid of fighting, what would he say if he accidentally injured Li Lianhua? What would he say when the aunt asked? The other party has been ill since childhood and is not good at lying. When the aunt asks, she will definitely reveal the truth. Young Xiaofeng. Suddenly, while pondering, a voice came from the ear, awakening Fang Duobing who had been caught up in a brainstorming. Ah! Fang Duobing, who had hidden concerns, stared with big eyes and followed the voice without blinking. Li Lianhua smiled at the young man's stunned appearance and said gently, That's right, young Xiaofeng. I have something important to do today. If young Xiaofeng has nothing to do, I can leave on my own. I have to hurry. Wearing Li Lianhua's clothes, Li Lianpeng, who had short hands and feet, also walked forward and looked at the young man in the brocade, Fang Xiaobao. He clasped his hands and said, Yes, I have important matters to attend to today. Mr. Fang, you can take your family guards and leave. This plot is not quite what Li Lianpeng remembers. The young master Fang Duobing of Qingyi Mountain Villa seems to have left the mountain too early. Now he looks particularly immature. Judging from the medical skills Li Lianpeng learned from Master Gongzi, his sickly condition should not have completely improved. If he were to cling to them now, he would have to be a comrade with Li Lianhua. Moreover, after a maximum of 2 months, if this party is sick, there will be no help at all, and the condition will worsen. At that time, this inexperienced Qingyi Hall kid will only be a drag on the two's wandering in the martial arts world. These 3-person groups cannot be formed now. If the sound of flutes flying is okay, it's better to say that a skinny camel is bigger than a horse. However, relatively speaking, that ruthless martial arts enthusiast seems to be a troublemaker. It's better not to provoke him. At least, we need to wait until the person with multiple illnesses reaches adulthood to completely break free from the meaning and origin of the name, multiple illnesses. Only when he shamelessly joins the Baichuan court, which has a clear division of labor with the Imperial Supervision Department and specializes in handling disputes in the martial arts world, can he travel with them in the martial arts world, uphold chivalry and justice, settle cases and punish evil. Well, that's it. I have made up my mind. Li Lianpeng decided to first let go of past grudges with Li Lianhua and get rid of the entanglement of the young boy in front of him, dressed in fresh clothes and angry horses. Anyway, this world is not lonely. Li Lianpeng felt that she had come this time for nothing. She had the best younger brother in the world, as well as the unique warblers, swallows, and swallows in the martial arts world. How could this life be boring? Although this younger brother is now extremely poisonous, disheartened, and lacking in glory, his strength is only 1/10 of what it was back then. Although those warblers, swallows, Yen, and Li Lianpeng have never seen one before, and have also assumed the status of a monk in the dietary country, what does this matter? If you are poisoned, you will be relieved. If you have a heart attack, you will be relieved. As for this casually fabricated monk identity, after the hair on his head, which had been shaved off by the unscrupulous monk Qingyi, grew long and returned to his elegant and turbid demeanor as a young master, what kind of young lady, martial arts heroine, and sect saint could not be easily captured? This life is meant to be enjoyed, as described in the poem he remembers. Life is full of joy, do not let the golden cup empty against the moon. Be proud when you should be, don't wait until you lose before regretting. Instead of being like his foolish younger brother Li Lianhua, who is so domineering and only cares about others but not oneself, being too kind is too much. In Li Lianpeng's impression, Li Xiangyi, who stood on the rooftop dancing with a red silk sword in an electric drama, was betrayed by his senior brother and friend after only 2 years of glory. My family's property was destroyed, and my beauty changed hands. It's like a bitter master, really suffering from old sins. But now that it's okay, with Li Lianpeng, the resurrection of his own pot, by his side, Li Lianhua will definitely not be as miserable as in TV dramas. Li Lianhua couldn't guess Li Lianpeng's current thoughts. In his opinion, this fake monk was as troublesome as the boy from Qingyi Hall. Seeing him standing side by side with herself, he couldn't help but move aside. That meaning is already very obvious, don't get involved. Li Lianpeng turned a blind eye to this and still looked at the young man in front of him with a furrowed brow. He fell silent for a moment, seeming dissatisfied with the undisguised drive in his and Li Lianhua's words. He hesitated to speak. Almsgiver Fang, I have a message from you that I don't know whether to say it or not. At this moment, Fang Duobing was jointly driven away by the two of them and felt quite unhappy. Upon hearing this, he couldn't breathe well and said, Master, just say it. That's what the little monk said. Li Lianpeng glanced at the guard Wang Wu beside Fang Duobing before continuing. Due to my apprenticeship, I have a slight mastery of the technique of Xianhuang. Just now, when I observed the face of the benefactor Fang, I noticed that he appeared energetic at this moment, but in fact, his body was weak, and his young spirit was not able to continue. Whenever it was cloudy or rainy, his old illness would immediately come to his door, which had been troubling him for many days. Fang Duobing was taken aback and blurted out, How do you know I? I immediately realized that there were close guards brought out by my family around me, so I couldn't help but speak up and defend myself. You monk, you are good at talking nonsense. I clearly have only contracted a slight cold. How could it be as serious as you said? I have already been cured of my illness. Wang Wu beside him suddenly widened his eyes and looked at Fang Duobing, saying, Young master, didn't you say? Fang Duobing quickly interrupted, Wang Wu, don't listen to this monk's nonsense. My illness has healed long ago, and I haven't soaked medicine soup or taken those unpleasant pills in the past 6 months. You monk, dare to speak recklessly in front of my guards, or I'll break Li Lianhua's leg. Li Lianhua watching the play on the side. Chapter 7. Who lost this silver? You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Li Lianhua looked at Fang Duobing with a gloomy expression and thought to herself, who did he provoke and who did he provoke? You can easily break someone's leg by opening and closing your mouth. Fang Duobing, this stinky guy, hasn't seen you for many years. He's really drifting away. Just as Fang Duobing was threatening Li Lianpeng, the loyal guard Wang Wu quietly reached into his arms and pulled out an arrow. He didn't wait for Fang Duobing's remaining light to stop him. Shoo! With a loud sound, it rushed into the sky and exploded at an altitude of several hundred meters. Pop! Fang Duobing slapped his fair forehead, wanting to cry without tears, Done. You. Wait for me. Fang Duobing pointed at Li Lianpeng, who was smiling, and fiercely threatened. He jumped up several meters high, stepped on a branch, and fled towards the mountains and forests. The Lingjian is a distinctive sound arrow of Qingyi mountain villa. Once it is fired, the people stationed in the nearby Qingyi hall will discover his whereabouts. At that time, the people sent by his mother will come and catch him back. After finally sneaking out, Fang Duobing didn't want to be caught back in the villa so quickly, so he didn't hesitate to find a place to hide first. Young master, wait for Lao Wu. The bodyguard Wang Wu, who had a strong physique and seemed to be practicing muscle skills, roared and ran towards the direction of Fang Duobing's departure, like a mountain bear. He stood up and roared wildly in the forest, startling a group of birds resting in the treetops. After the figure of the master and servant completely disappeared near the Lotus Tower, Li Lianpeng clasped his hands and sang a Buddhist chant, Amitabha Buddha, young masterly, I'm hungry. Can I borrow the pots, bowls, ladles, and pots from young Master Li's building again to serve as ingredients? I didn't mention anything about Li Lianhua leaving him behind. Li Lianhua waved her hand and said, use it. This fake monk has really made up his mind to rely on him. If I had known this, I shouldn't have listened to this person's nonsense yesterday. Just refuse directly. I have been searching for clues all these years, probably because I was too concerned and accidentally deceived by this fake monk who observes his words and expressions. As for what the monk said, knowing the secret about the person he was looking for and the place where his senior brother Dan Gudao's body was hiding must also be false. Li Xiangyi and the martial arts lunatic who ranked among the top martial arts experts in the martial arts world in the East China Sea, regardless of life or death, were unable to inquire about the whereabouts of his senior brother. How could this fake monk, who appeared from somewhere, know? Names are fake, identities are fake, divination is fake, all are fake. Li Lianhua glanced at the busy cooking figure in the building with a headache, thinking to herself that only this culinary skill is true. He tasted the meal last night, and it tasted really good. It was much stronger than the meal he had nothing to do but rely on a recipe book to make after drinking and eating. It was already past noon. In front of the Lotus Tower, there is a small wooden table and two small benches. Li Lianpeng and Li Lianhua sit opposite each other, drinking afternoon tea. Li Gongzi really doesn't know medical skills. I have a slight understanding. How much is 1 point? Just a little. If it's not as good as empty air, you should be in case. You can tell at a glance that the young hero on that side has hidden diseases, so I can't flatter him. As is well known, it is an unsolved mystery how advanced Li Lianhua's medical skills are. In Li Lianpeng's memory, there was no mention of how Li Lianhua's medical skills were when she played the grand finale in the drama. It is well known that Li Lianhua, the owner of the Lotus Tower, has superb medical skills and can heal the bones of life, possessing the technique of resurrection. Little did they know that the origin of this title of divine doctor was fake. The first thing he did to become famous was to revive Shi Wenjue, the martial arts literary champion, Haoshou Poor Classic, who had died from serious injuries in a duel with others and had been buried for many days. The second thing was to cure the Iron Shao hero, He Lan, who had fallen from a cliff and died with all his bones broken, and had also been buried for many days. Through the promotion of these two people, Li Lianhua gained the title of Li Shini in the martial arts world. In fact, both of these things are exaggerated propaganda. Shi Wenjue dueled with someone and was seriously injured. He used the turtle breathing technique to close his breath and heal his injuries. The local villagers mistakenly buried him as a dead person. As Li Lianhua passed by, she heard someone shouting for help in the grave and quickly dug him out. It is true that he saved his life with kindness. As for the blacksmith Helan, the boy failed to beg for his wife and staged a grand act of jumping off a cliff, pretending to be dead and burying himself. Coincidentally, Li Lianhua passed by and kindly dug him out. Being meddlesome is true. Therefore, Li Lianpeng had this question, asking himself is much better than guessing, right? But since Li Lianhua said she understands a little bit, she probably knows medical skills. After all, a long illness makes a doctor. With his talent and intelligence, he easily became the first in the world to learn martial arts, and his medical skills were unreasonable and could not be easily mastered. Since Master Li is skilled in medicine, I believe he has treated many patients over the years and has accumulated a considerable amount of silver. Looking at the items in this building, I can see that everything is in good condition and the ingredients are also quite fresh. I wonder if I can borrow some silver flowers from Master Li. Li Lianpeng stopped pretending and directly asked to borrow money without any embarrassment. Li Lianhua is Li Xiangyi, and Li Xiangyi is his younger brother. The two brothers haven't seen each other for many years. Is there any problem with him, who is an older brother, spending tens of taels of silver on his own brother's flour? No problem. Master Kong Kong laughed. Those items were saved over the years, and as for those fresh ingredients, they were all pitifully given to me by kind-hearted people. I really don't have any money. Li Lianpeng had a smile on her face and looked for Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com to lift her arm. She moved her right hand away from the wooden table and placed a silver ingot under her palm. These 10 taels of silver were accidentally found by the monk in the wooden building. Since Master Li said you are penniless, then I believe these 10 taels of silver were not lost by him. Li Lianhua stared fixedly at the silver ingot, her back teeth almost biting apart, and exclaimed in her heart, "Mine, that's my silver. I treated 2 patients and earned the money." Just as I had spoken earlier, this mouth was about to be slapped on the spot, so I had to take a deep breath, difficult to move my gaze away, and said with a smile on my face, "No. That's good." Li Lianpeng spread out his left hand and looked down at his palm. "Then the other 10 taels of silver, I don't think it belongs to you, young Master Li. Since that's the case, I'll take these 10 taels of silver first and pay for the next month's meal. Here, Master Li, please don't be polite to me. Please accept it. There is a saying that goes well, my dear brother, keep an eye on the books. Besides, I met Mr. Li by chance and was able to make this overseas mayfly person eat and live with him in this Lotus Tower. I am extremely grateful that I still have to pay for the meal. Thank you, thank you." Li Lianhua was so angry that she stuttered. However, trembling, he reached out and took the 10 taels of silver hidden under the pillow from Li Lianpeng's hand for emergency use. "If you're grateful, please don't say anything more, young Master Li, otherwise, I'll feel uneasy about my conscience. Are you an unscrupulous monk who not only occupies the nest of magpies, but also borrows flowers and offers them to Buddha recklessly, making your conscience uneasy?" Li Lianhua lamented in her heart, "Oh my goodness, collect your divine powers. What have I done to Li Lianhua? You sent such a person to torture me." Chapter 8. People laugh at me for being too crazy. You are listening at novel full.audio. Li Lianpeng's provocative behavior of hitting 7 inches with a snake is mainly to punish Li Lianhua, as it is a punishment for the younger brother who secretly touched and left him, an undisclosed elder brother, running away. At the same time, it also puts on its own posture. He is a monk with an unknown origin, so he has fallen for him. Li Lianpeng felt that he wasn't particularly concerned about money. After all, he had lived in the mountains for so long and had no idea about the purchasing power of money in this world. He himself doesn't know what 10 taels of silver can buy. But seeing Li Lianhua's face contorted with anger, I wonder if these 10 taels could be spent for 3 to 5 days without spending too much money. Li Gongzi, since you and I each have 10 taels of silver now, why not go to the nearby town together and buy 2 sets of clothes? Li Lianpeng lifted the cloth sleeve that was not even close to her wrist. Li Gongzi, you see, it's not that I don't understand frugality. It's really that Li Gongzi borrowed this garment from me, which is a bit too small. It's even difficult for me to walk on it. Li Lianpeng is taller than Li Lianhua and has a much stronger physique. Li Lianhua looked thin and weak. He was wearing a fitted long shirt, but when he reached Li Lianpeng's body, it seemed too tight and uncomfortable. Li Lianpeng was afraid that he might accidentally break it. After all, it was the first piece of clothing gifted to him by Li Lianhua, which had considerable commemorative value. Li Lianpeng didn't want it to be destroyed. Even walking is difficult, can you still catch up with me so quickly? Li Lianhua exclaimed in anger, with a puzzled expression on her face, it's not because I refused to accompany you to the town, but because I was entrusted by someone before I left. There is really something urgent that needs to be done and I need to rush to Yunzi County immediately. Before Li Lianhua could finish speaking, she saw the fake monk's eyes brighten. Suddenly, Li Lianhua's voice involuntarily weakened. That's a good relationship, Mr. Li. I believe there must be more styles of clothing in Yunzi County, right? I saw a hint of embarrassment on the handsome face of the empty monk, Li Gongzi. To be honest, I am actually a beauty lover and I am quite particular about my own attire. In my hometown of the food country, there is a ranking of world beautiful monks among monks, and I am not talented, ranking third. Ha! Li Lianhua grinned, for some reason. He, who was originally very angry, now felt particularly eager to smile. The world's beautiful monks. When did monks come up with such a ranking? Why doesn't he know? That's right, the fake monk keeps saying that he comes from the dietary country at the end of the East China Sea, which must be the ranking he made up casually. In the kingdom of Xi, there were only 3 rankings in the martial arts world, which were of great reference value. The list of martial arts masters that is evaluated every 10 years in the 10,000 people register. The list of Jianghu beauties published every 3 years by Yanji Studio. And the weapon ranking list launched by the Forging Workshop 100 years ago, also known as the Divine Weapon List. Besides, which of the less well-known martial arts charts in the martial arts world, such as the calligraphy, painting, qin, and chess charts, Jianghu strange people charts, mount charts, famous craftsman charts, world food charts, famous schools and orthodox schools charts, doesn't sound more reliable than this beautiful monk charts. This monk, that's really enough. I've been making up lies here, lazy and serious, just some silly words. Li Lianhua took a deep breath and slowly exhaled, with a serious expression on her face, saying, Let me be frank with you, master. I don't know what your intentions are when you come to me. In short, I don't have time to play around with you here anymore. If we meet, I don't want to cause any unpleasantness. I will give you these 10 taels of silver, totaling 20 taels, which is all I have. Li Lianhua's bloodshot eyes stared fixedly at Li Lianpeng and said, Taking these 20 taels of silver, whether the monk continues to travel around the world or seeks refuge in a nearby incense temple, I have no control over it. However, in short, this is not the place where the monk will stay for a long time. Li Lianpeng looked at her younger brother, who was not good at nourishing qi, and slowly shook his head, sighing softly. Isn't it just that I borrowed a piece of clothing from you and took some silver? How could I be so angry? You don't know the poison of your green tea, so you can't easily get angry. Once your internal strength is affected, you can't accidentally suppress the toxins in your body, allowing them to invade the 5 organs and 6 organs, which will ruin your life. Since Prince Li cannot trust me, I have no choice but to leave with these 20 taels. Li Lianpeng stood up and turned his head to look at the beautifully designed small building next to him, his gaze full of reluctance. Unfortunately, I have the ambition and belief that whoever goes to hell will not go to hell. I have traveled thousands of miles to leave my homeland for meals, traveled around the world, and saved all sentient beings. Along the way, I have seen many people of all kinds in this mortal world. I have a compassionate heart towards those who either have lofty aspirations, are consumed by desires, or are trapped by emotions. The 5 poisons, 6 desires, 7 emotions, 8 suffering, 9 difficulties, and 10 calamities can all lead people into a dangerous situation where they will never be able to recover. However, most of the time, I can only watch helplessly, but I am powerless. Li Lianpeng said this with a long sigh and a sympathetic tone. I saw a person like Li Gongzi who was trapped by obsession. I originally wanted to save Li Gongzi's life, so that you could escape the sea of suffering and find your original self. However, I never knew that you were so ungrateful. Well, since that's the case, I will leave. Without waiting for Li Lianhua to say anything, Li Lianpeng suddenly turned around, lifted her legs, and walked slowly, very slowly, towards the distant mountains and forests. Zhaozhuyuan.com, people laugh at me for being too crazy, I laugh at others for not being able to see through. I don't see the tombs of the 5 tombs heroes, no flowers, no wine, no hose, no fields. Everyone is suffering, but each has their own destiny. I am not proficient in learning, so I will go to the shore of the East China Sea, take a ferry, and return to the country of food. I will never travel around again in this life. I just don't know if on this journey back to my hometown, I will have the opportunity to see such a sweaty martial arts battle again, where the sword rises and the lotus flowers bloom on the East China Sea. The spirit of a young hero, even monks and other monks are impressed by it. That sword and sword, the unparalleled style of the 2 martial arts masters' duel, I believe I will never see it again in my life. Unfortunately. Wait a moment. Li Lianhua's face was gloomy and uncertain, and she called out to Li Lianpeng. Seeing that Li Lianpeng had not turned around for a long time, Li Lianhua became anxious and quickly stood up. She accidentally knocked over the small wooden table in front of her, and the teapot fell to the ground. The cool tea water soaked the flowers and plants on the ground. Master Kong, please wait a moment. Li Lianhua shouted at the exit, I made a mistake. I don't know what the monk said is true, but I have a bad eye and almost missed the master. Please stay. In this small building, the monk can stay as long as he wants. Please stay. After 2 words of persuasion were shouted out. The young monk in cloth with his back to Li Lianhua stopped his pace. After talking for a while, he slowly took less than 20 steps, indicating that this guy had no intention of leaving. At this moment, Li Lianhua was disturbed by Li Lianpeng's words, which were shrouded in clouds and mist, and she did not pay attention to this detail for the time being. Otherwise, he would definitely not speak up to stop this fake monk. Chapter 9. Introduction to Dr. Li Lianhua. You are listening at novel full.audio. When she sighed and turned away, she was like an old woman entangled in her feet, chattering and grinding away. The traces of being held back by someone loudly, and also the meteors in big strides, appear quite eager. Li Lianpeng didn't care at all. Li Lianhua noticed that his mind was flawed, and it didn't matter if he saw it. Is it okay for him to be round? At most, wasting some words is enough. Come on, help up the tea table. Why is young Master Li so careless? Have you bumped into it? I have a good understanding of the medical theory of injuries caused by falls. Can you help young master take a look? After taking 2 steps in one, Li Lianpeng bent down and helped the small wooden table up. He placed the teapot and cup that had fallen on the grass on the wooden table in their original form, and then enthusiastically pulled up Li Lianhua's sleeve, shouting to see him injured. The moment before, there was still a gloomy and unfulfilled demeanor of a high monk, but the next moment, there was a change in his dog-legged posture, and Li Lianhua was stunned on the side. Li Lianhua stared blankly at Li Lianpeng, letting him pull his sleeve and look up and down. It took him a while before he realized it. This empty monk, I have no intention of leaving at all, just waiting for him to speak up and persuade me to stay, right? Li Lianhua's heart suddenly twitched, and for a moment, she was quite speechless. Not to mention whether the ranking of beautiful monks is true or false, just this shameless skill alone, Kong monk is undoubtedly a masterpiece, and Li Lianhua feels inferior. Li Lianhua admitted that although he was not a gentleman, he was not the kind of petty person who always kept talking back and forth. Seeing this, she reluctantly smiled and said, I'm fine, thank you very much for your concern, master. Li Lianpeng finally released his hand holding Li Lianhua's sleeve, clasped his hands together, and smiled at Li Lianhua. Li Gongzi, let's still refer to the monk's dharma name. The word master is something that I believe I am not skilled in learning and cannot afford to be. Otherwise, I will definitely not let Li Gongzi misunderstand like this. After this extreme tug and tug, Li Lianhua temporarily lost her mind of driving Li Lianpeng away. This fake monk doesn't have any malicious intentions, let alone where he comes from or what his purpose is. It seems that even if he is now a fake monk, he has stayed in the temple for at least a period of time. Otherwise, one would not casually say such profound Buddhist words. The monk Li Lianhua knew, the abbot of Hanshui Temple in Yangzhou City, had lost his monk, and he had been practicing Buddhism for decades. He couldn't even say such a charming and logical sentence. Looking up at the sky, Li Lianhua roughly estimated the direction and distance in her heart before looking at the fake monk who was sitting on the small stool again at some point and saying, "It's getting late today, and Yunzi County is about 100 miles away from here. This small building is too eye-catching, and it's not appropriate to rush in the evening. Let's go to Yunzi together when it's just dawn tomorrow morning." Upon hearing this, Li Lianpeng nodded, looking very articulate, "Let young Master Li arrange it, I will be successful." Li Lianhua stopped talking much. Glancing at the teapot running out of water, he picked up the empty pot and went to the stove built in the middle of the small building. He lit charcoal and boiled water in an iron pot. Boil the water, pick it up and pour it into a teapot. Discard some of the tea leaves picked and sun-dried along the way, cover them with a lid, and walk outside the building. Rinse the soil off the rim of the cup and pour another cup of tea for each of them. When doing these things, Li Lianhua's expression was serious, her movements were meticulous, and her mind was completely immersed, looking quite pleasing to the eye. Li Lianpeng, who had fully witnessed this scene, couldn't help but nod to himself. Not to mention, Li Lianhua, who was not angry, appeared to have a somewhat ethereal demeanor of an extraordinary expert. The two of them sat and drank tea all afternoon. During this time, Li Lianpeng, who used the pseudonym Kong Kong, asked many questions about Li Lianhua's affairs in the Shigua world. Li Lianhua is not the arrogant young Tianjiao of Li Xiangyi, but only dedicated to upholding justice in the martial arts world. He is Li Lianhua, driving a mobile wooden building around the world. Growing vegetables and flowers requires having a dog. He lives a rural life and knows how to enjoy a short life. Therefore, the questions that Li Lianpeng's seemingly common-sense people in the martial arts world know are almost always answered by Li Lianhua, who has fallen to the bottom, transformed into ordinary people, and temporarily let go of her guard. According to Li Lianhua, there is no clear hierarchy of martial artists among the 3 religions and 9 streams in the martial arts world. Generally speaking, the older the seniority of martial arts practitioners from the same martial arts school, the more powerful their martial arts skills are. Practicing martial arts involves practicing diligently and gradually mastering skills. As long as one's natural talent is not too poor, and they are willing to endure hardships and persevere, after a certain period of time, they will be more than enough to wander the martial arts world. Of course, there are exceptions to this, such as Li Xiangyi, who fell from the list of martial arts experts in the 10,000 people register 6 years ago and topped the list at the age of only 18. He is already recognized as the #1 martial arts expert in the martial arts world, and can be said to have reached the pinnacle of his debut. When talking about Li Xiangyi 6 years ago, Li Lianhua 6 years later had a slightly unnatural expression. Although he tried his best to pretend to be calm, Li Lianpeng still saw a hint of self-deprecation on his face. With the unparalleled martial arts skills of Yangzhou man, he wielded 2 world-renowned swords, Shaoshi and Jiannek. However, due to his arrogance, he was betrayed by his fellow disciples and friends. He was poisoned and fought in the East China Sea, where he was poisoned and buried. Although he was not really dead, his martial arts were unable to be exerted under the influence of the poison of Bai Cha, and he reluctantly relied on Yangzhou's slow internal power to sustain his life, which was almost no different from his complete defeat in martial arts. For a young martial arts genius who has always had smooth sailing since entering the martial arts world, established the Siga Gate, and is famous and full of energy, it is undoubtedly a heavy blow more serious than death. However, after Li Xiangyi's death, there was another wandering doctor in the world who knew how to observe people's hearts and how to live in the martial arts world, Li Lianhua, the owner of the Lotus Tower with auspicious patterns. In Li Gongzi's opinion, why did that spirited young genius Li Xiangyi suffer from a friend's poisoning and betrayal? Li Lianpeng suddenly asked. Li Lianhua, who was reminiscing about the past, was taken aback at the words, "What?" Li Lianpeng repeated it again, and after hearing it, Li Lianhua smiled and said, "In my opinion, there is no need to talk too much about these past events in the martial arts world. Those martial artists who keep rankings and lists all day long are so boring. What's the point of fighting and killing all day long? Losing a game is not a big deal, and losing face is not worth it. If you accidentally get a hole in your body and lose your life, it's not worth it at all. If you win, if you hit someone too hard, injure them, or accidentally kill them, it will add to the resentment of the martial arts world and waste your life. Your conscience will be uneasy for a lifetime. Let's talk about that young genius Li Xiangyi, a famous and stunning figure in the martial arts world. He created the Xiangyi Tai sword technique, which was famous throughout the world and admired by thousands of people. But what about it? In the end, he ended up with a tragic fate of betrayal from his close friends and family, losing his reputation and dying without a whole body. When Li Lianhua said this, her expression was already relieved, and there was no hint of self-deprecation on her delicate face, as if she was commenting on someone else's story. I saw him spread out his hand towards Li Lianpeng, who seemed to know his identity, and let out a light sigh. Those who wield swords and wander in the martial arts world are short-lived. I, Li Lianhua, am just a doctor wandering in the martial arts world, just to make a living, just to live peacefully and live a long life of 100 years. After a pause, Li Lianhua continued softly. As for the rest, I'm sorry to say something unpleasant. What does that have to do with me? Chapter 10. Murders in Qingyi Town. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. The words spoken by Li Lianhua to Li Lianpeng may seem like they didn't answer anything, but in reality, they answered everything. The implication is that Li Xiangyi, who was once unparalleled in swordsmanship and dressed in fresh clothes, has died in the Battle of the East China Sea 6 years ago. Along with those Jianghu friends and enemies, they were buried in the East China Sea. He is now just Li Lianhua, the owner of the Lotus Tower with auspicious patterns. He only seeks a living and does not participate in the affairs of the martial arts world. He is like a wandering doctor in the martial arts world. Li Gongzi's words are true. Life is unpredictable, past events are like smoke, and one should naturally go with the wind. After Li Lianpeng said this, he stopped talking about this matter. Li Lianhua, just Li Lianhua. Isn't this his own journey? Recognizing reality, letting go of grudges, living well in the present, and doing what one wants and should do is what Li Lianhua is all about. He is also the person who left the deepest impression on Li Lianpeng in the drama, and his every move is the most touching. Instead of a fleeting and youthful martial arts genius, Li Xiangyi. Li Xiangyi is more of a symbol about the origin of Li Lianhua. From glory to simplicity and ordinary, Li Xiangyi may seem to have lost everything, but in reality, when he changed his face and appeared in the martial arts world as Li Lianhua, he had already quietly completed his transformation without realizing it. Just like the Buddhist Zen saying, "With one thought, the heart is pure, and lotus flowers bloom everywhere." Li Lianhua, who has not long known her fate, probably has only one obsession now, which is to find the body of her senior brother Shan Gudao, who was taken away, and investigate the true cause of her death. Only news from Dan Gudao and his former friends and lovers can shake his mind and make his thoughts impure. If now, when Li Lianhua finds out that her senior brother Dan Gudao has not died and has also planned a shocking conspiracy, what would he feel if he learned that his former confidant, who was once beautiful, would wait for him for 10 years, lose his heart and turn to someone else's embrace. Li Lianpeng already has an answer in his heart. But he is not satisfied with this answer. He wants to rewrite the ending of the story. When everything is still possible. After all, this is the drama he is pursuing, and it is also the only clear memory of his past life and previous life after Li Lianpeng came to this unfamiliar and familiar martial arts world. The next day at noon. Qingyi town, Lu Laoer's coffin shop. After Li Lianhua left Li Lianpeng behind, the important matter he had previously mentioned being entrusted by others became less urgent. In the early morning, it rained. The two of them held the same paper umbrella, one deep and one shallow, and arrived at Qingyi town, which was closest to the parking spot of the Lotus Tower. They left a fox spirit and a dog to keep watch. When it comes to this matter, Li Lianpeng also finds it quite fascinating. The exquisitely designed wooden building of Li Lianhua is always thrown into the mountains by Li Lianhua so casually. It is a clumsy and strange thing that she has never been robbed in so many years. In this world of martial arts, there are not only virtuous people, but also numerous people who engage in petty theft. People who can't eat enough can do anything. However, the strong local dog of the fox spirit has been with Li Lianhua for 3 years now. Many of the old ornaments in the Lianhua building have fallen into dust, and no one has touched them. I think this is the uniqueness of Li Lianhua and Li Yuyi. Li Lianpeng lowered her head and looked at the person lying in the coffin, her thoughts wandering and her attention quite inattentive. However, in the eyes of others, they feel that this young monk really has the demeanor of a high monk. Faced with such a scene before them, he can remain calm and heartless, with a compassionate expression on his face, showing compassion for the world. Among the high-quality coffins made of pure cypress wood in the hall, Lu Bingkuan, the owner of Lu Laoer's coffin shop, whose body had been shattered into 201 pieces, was barely pieced together. He was wearing a brand new birthday robe and lying face up inside. If only looking at his face, he died relatively peacefully, with a blue and white face that showed no signs of pain, and even a faint smile on the corner of his mouth. But when I looked down and saw other parts of his body below his neck, I wouldn't think that way anymore. Lu Bingkuan, the second in command of the coffin shop, died, but it's not peaceful at all. Li Lianpeng also didn't expect that the first dead person he saw after descending the mountain would have such a respectful appearance, and he was very satisfied. Being cruelly killed by someone, not to mention being broken into 201 pieces. Nauseous, feeling nauseous twice, I quickly silently recited the calm heart curse. Should I say it or not? The calming spell taught by Master Gongzi really works. Master, have you ever surpassed the limit? Suddenly, a short and strong man in his 40s with a dark face approached carefully and asked. Li Lianpeng finally regained his senses and forcefully suppressed the surging sensation in his stomach. He didn't look at the scene inside the coffin and turned to look at the short and strong man with red and swollen eyes, who clearly had cried a lot before. He whispered. I have recited the rebirth mantra and one-character heart mantra for benefactor Lu, and he can now rest assured. Thank you very much, Master. The short and strong man quickly thanked him. The deceased has passed away, and the living are like this. Please pay tribute, benefactor. I have gone. Li Lianpeng doesn't want to stay in this spiritual hall for a moment. He is just a fake monk. He knows how to recite the Buddhist mantras of rebirth and one-character heart that are used to transcend the deceased, but it is the first time he has recited them in front of a dead person. Moreover, in the face of such a brutally murdered and unrecognizable body. With an intact head, Li Lianpeng's ability to hold back and not vomit was already remarkable. Still reciting sutras for transcendence. Think too much. Li Lianpeng strode out of the hall where corpses were parked and the atmosphere was heavy, and went to the courtyard outside. She took a deep breath and slowly exhaled, feeling better. Empty, have you finished transcending the second son of the Lu family? Li Lianhua, standing under the eaves, greeted her with a faint smile on her face. Li Lianpeng turned his head and glanced at him, then looked for Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com and immediately lowered his head, singing a Buddhist chant, Amitabha Buddha, my Buddha is merciful. I cannot bear to see such a tragic scene. I kindly request that Master Li never allow me to transcend the dead again in the future. Li Lianhua just smiled and said, Kong, didn't you say you want to save all living beings? Can the deceased be considered a member of all living beings? After speaking, wait for him to answer. In my heart, I thought to myself, you fake monk. How long do I think you can pretend? Li Lianhua is good at post-reflection. After reviewing his experiences in the past 2 days, he finally came to the conclusion that this young monk with the Dharma name empty, since he knows his identity, must be related to the Wukong monk at the Hanshui temple in Yangzhou city. Because when he was rescued back then, there were several homeless beggars following him without the monk, and this Kong mage is highly likely to be one of those beggars. Later on, he sneaked out and coincidentally ran into himself in Qingyi town. He had no money in his pocket and had no means of making a living, so he decided to follow his acquaintance and make a living. The roar of the Buddhist lion is a clear proof. In his impression, only the martial monks of Hanshui temple can use it. Li Lianpeng shook his head and said, it doesn't count. Upon hearing these words, Li Lianhua couldn't help but feel a sense of joy in her heart, waiting patiently for the following. Let me expose you. I only heard the fake monk say, as the saying goes, death is like a lamp extinguished, like pouring snow on a pond. If you want to turn your soul back, you must catch the bright moon from the bottom of the sea. After a person's death, everything is at rest, leaving a body with a human-like appearance for family members to remember. However, in the eyes of the little monk, it is no different from the rocks and stones that can be seen everywhere on the roadside, and naturally cannot be considered as sentient beings. Only living people are considered sentient beings.